What's up, everyone? It is Dylan from Class 1A bringing you another My Hero Academia manga breakdown. This week we have Chapter 340, The Story of How We All Became Heroes, Part 3. We kick off the chapter at the Anti-Paranormal Liberation Front Task Force's office. I can't even begin to understand how we're gonna shorten this down. Can we say APLFTF? I guess we're just gonna call it the task force. Before they're able to go full steam ahead with the plan, they need to wait for Aoyama's case to be settled, since so much hinges on their ability to find AFO. So I really like that we have Ragdoll here because it feels like we have a real world with real consequences for some of the actions. I mean, Horikoshi could have just used Ragdoll basically to take her quirk and to show how powerful All for One is, but instead he keeps her in the story, which is really good because that totally makes sense. Yeah, she got screwed over by AFO. Of course she's going to want to be involved in his capture here. I just love it. I love that anything that happens to even minor characters expect it to come around in some way. And then All Might explains the plan. Separate All for One and Shigaraki. Shigaraki's power level has surpassed All for One's, so both of them together would be unstoppable. But to separate them, they also need to worry about the bodyguards, like Dabi. So in order to separate Shigaraki and All for One, they'll need to single out every single League of Villain and defeat them one by one. Okay, so the thought of Shigaraki being stronger than All for One at his prime is unimaginable. I mean, peak All Might was barely able to defeat All for One at this moment, so we're up against something really, really bad here. And what I really like is that they're starting to set up some really cool fights though. They're planting the seeds so we know what's coming. I mean, one-on-one showdowns with all the League of Villains, okay, we need to take out Dabi, Todoroki, get in there. We need to take out Toga, Uraraka, get in there. We have just a setup for these really cool fights that are going to be coming, the obvious fan service fights that we're all waiting for. They're clearly setting up here, and I'm just so excited for them. We then jump over to Aoyama, who's currently being detained. Across from him is Aizawa, who is looking kind of badass with a scar and eye patch. Okay, so I can't even begin to explain how cool punished Aizawa looks here. I mean, a total badass mode. The only thing I'm wondering is how much of an effect on his quirk does his eye injury have? After examination, it's ruled out that Aoyama has any explosives implanted in him like Lady Nagan. Rather, the only force against him is AFO's pure terror. Though he still has the backing of his friends, Aoyama no longer believes in himself, saying if he's given a chance he would do it all again. And honestly, this just makes me feel so much more for Aoyama. I mean, he was born a quirkless kid, he's kind of meek, and yeah, he's going up against the world's greatest villain of all time, someone who's seen as basically all powerful and was barely able to be stopped the first time. Of course he's going to be terrified here. But Aizawa isn't going to let that happen. Aoyama is still his student, and he's going to tear away all the fear AFO has caused. He's not going to let Aoyama fall into the black pit of despair. Instead, him and his friends are going to fight together. Hell yes, nothing can't be solved by an Aizawa pep talk. But Aoyama won't take this on alone. Instead, he'll have the backup of Shinzo. Yes, finally, we're seeing more Shinzo. And I love this final pose here of him in the Spider-Man pose, showing us he has learned his raps, he has great control over him. And also Horikoshi kind of signaling to us he saw the new Spider-Man movie because we know he's a big Spider-Man fan. And so I think we're just setting up a lot of really awesome stuff here. So many potentials for different fights, so many multiple storylines that are going to be happening at once. I mean, just take a look at all the different groups that we have here. We have the Hero Force led by Endeavor and Genist. We have Class 1A, which is going to be probably their own little group searching out people. We have the All Might, Ragdoll, and Hawks Task Force. We have Shinzo and Aoyama. And then we also have just a bunch of splinter groups scattered throughout the different places. We have Fat Gum, Nigiri, and Sun Eater in their own little group. I'm sure we're going to have a ton more students kind of scattered to the wind like this too. So now we're wondering what's going to happen next. So I think over the next year, what we can expect, because My Hero only has a year left, is that we're going to get a lot of awesome fights. Basically a bunch of fan service fights that we've been dying to see. 2, we're going to learn more about the nature of All for One and One for All. I'm expecting us to have a couple chapters where we go back deep into the vestige state to learn more about what's going on there, how are they connected, and possibly where that's going to go in the story and how that's going to have the ripple effects to the greater society here. And then finally, we're going to get the showdown between All for One and One for All, of course. We're going to have the Deku versus Shigaraki, it's going to be big and it's going to be epic. But what we should expect immediately to see is a wrap up of what's going on with Aoyama and Shinzo. Like I'll expect like Aoyama to finish whatever he's having being detained. Like they'll probably sign some paperwork, let him go. But him and Shinzo are then gonna like go off on their journey. I'm not expecting them to jump around too much from there. Like we probably should finish that storyline and then jump back out to like the setup of the big war arc. I wouldn't expect this to be like a little bit of Shinzo and Aoyama jump over to Class 1A for a while and then jump back and forth like that. We might get them in the chapter, but I don't expect big breaks in this actual storyline itself. But overall, it might feel like we're in a bit of a lull in the story, but that's totally fine because we just had a big reveal with the UA trader, and then we're in between like the big reveal and then like a big fight. We're kind of in that middle stage now. So it might feel like things are kind of like low to the ground, not a lot's happening, but it's all set up. So just sit with the setup, enjoy it, take in what's going on here, because what's coming next is gonna be amazing. But I guess we're just gonna have to wait until next week to see what's gonna happen next in the story. Otherwise, until then, subscribe and I will see you all next class.